together today in the last minute announcement with a school which has made a bit of a disturbance in people having to organize for their kids for this morning. But nevertheless, I think that allows us to have a more inclusive conversation on the topic of DEI. So this week has been a DEI week for us. And I think would be good for me to lay as a foundation is, as we have this discussion, is what do we understand about DEI, but from a business case perspective. And a lot of studies show that, in fact, it is directly linked with productivity, efficiency, retention, and we're just talking about the inclusion of the future generation. Mark and I have been delivering 2 days, we've been 3 days of DEI. And I think what we see, be it from the local companies or those present across the region, the challenges are the same. And then when we link that with DEI, it's just kind of a, you suddenly realize that it's not as complex as that. Yeah. So the purpose and the way that we plan to do this forum today is for us to have a conversation on the topic. And we do have the panel today to talk to us from their experience, of course, which we will use to circulate within our network so that it becomes something that can go out of this room as well. So the conversation is also for us to be able to share what are we doing within our organization. So I would like to introduce to you Shalene, who moved from being totally total to being totally accented on Accenture.
Oh my God.
So apart from taking responsibilities, not only in Mauritius, but also in Vietnam as from last year. So I think Shalene comes in from a not only gender diversity perspective, but sector diversity as well as going beyond Mauritius. So we would love to hear from you in a moment on a few things, Shalene. And pleasure. And I'm going to move to the ladies first. Sadna, I think you paved the way and you've shown in a particular sector. You've been a first woman, kind of as you stepped up at the Bank of Mauritius. And if I remember correctly, where you joined in 2003. So 20 years down the line, you are now the first deputy governor, and if I'm not, second deputy governor, and if I'm not mistaken, the first one ever.
The first lady deputy.
The first lady deputy governor.
Well done.
And who knows, the first lady governor to come, right?
We both mentioned that.
It's good to mention that and to record that, right? So I think you will have enormous to share to us on the DEI perspective from your sector. Juliet has been evolving in an environment of Dale Carnegie, coming from the UK, and she has been a first as well in many situations, amongst the first women Dale Carnegie franchisees. At that moment, she was also the first woman president of our association, the International Dale Carnegie Franchisee Association, and she's been a trainer. Juliet has been a role model for a lot of women, where as the president of the IDCFA, she had to meet the expectations of about 200 plus franchisees across the globe, and which covers about 80 different countries. Vidya, I think one of the words I remember from our initial conversation has been how through innovation, we can bring in that element of destroying the environment or disturbing the environment, but in a very positive way. And that was a conversation that I heard from you many years ago, and I think you've been an influencer in the economic landscape of Mauritius, be it from as the MD of Ceridian Mauritius, or globally as you step up and you are a global speaker, and as well as from your parcours at Business Mauritius. It would be wonderful to hear from you and that topic.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Mark, first time ever in Mauritius, discovered Mauritius last Thursday, and 1 week down the line, he knows it all. And, so I think what is interesting to say about Mark is that Mark is a DEI Dale Carnegie. That's what he's been exposed to. He's a Carnegie master who's delivered training in I don't know how many countries?
30 maybe.
30 countries, interacted with more than 10,000 people across these territories, and with the 30 years experience under his sleeves or belt or whatever we want to call it, I think, Mark, you are very well positioned this morning to talk to us about this topic. So thank you very much for being with us today. So probably as we start this conversation today, maybe if you can share with us, I don't know who would want to start, how does that theme of diversity, equity, and inclusion resonate to you? As in, what does it mean for you, and how it resonates to you? We were just starting our conversation here. So how does that topic resonate to you? Do we want to start?
Shall I go first?
Please.
Well, I retired from owning and running a Dale Carnegie business.
Do you need a microphone, or we are good?
We're good? Oh, good. And wanted to do something useful with my additional time. This was about 6 months ago. And I was shocked, forgive my naivety, but shocked when I discovered what female unemployment looked like in the UK. And since I came to Mauritius, I can also see that the situation is very similar in Mauritius. So that's impacted me, and now I'm a trustee of a national charity in the UK called SmartWorks, which coaches and supports women back into employment. But it still staggers me that, for example, in Mauritius, I know that the female unemployment situation is worse now than it was pre-COVID, that the worst hit age group is 16 to 24-year-olds, and that I think it's about 29% of the unemployed women in Mauritius have degree-level qualifications. So something's not quite right, either in the organisations where women can access employment, or with the way women are feeling about their ability to access employment. And of course, employment's not just about a paycheck, it's about freedom, and it's about a sense of identity and purpose as well. So right now, that's how the topic is affecting me, is what can we do in our business communities and in our support of women to level the playing field?
Thank you, Juliet. Vijay, you want to
Yeah, sure.
bridge on to that? So how does the topic DI resonate to you?
I think for me, from a country level, I think we have challenges in terms of talent. We have a declining workforce. We have, especially in our sector, which is a technology sector where we build software, what we see increasingly that we have fewer and fewer women in leadership. And for me, this is a big concern, because I believe that if we really want to go up the value chain as a country, then we need to encourage more talent to go into these high growth sectors. So from an innovation point of view, which is where I think without any question people have a direct causation much more than a correlation between diversity and innovation. What we see, all companies who are highly diverse have proven that they are more profitable, they are able to grow revenue, they are also able to grow innovation revenue, which is revenue of new products and services. And obviously, we as an organization, we are in many countries and we have this diversity. But I think as a challenge, diversity should not be looked as separate to inclusion, because you can try and build an organization with diverse way of thinking, looking at different geographies with people with different background, etc. But unless you have a very strong inclusion, which is the secret sauce to actually making all of this happen, then you don't actually get the benefit of it. Yeah. So for me, it's very much how we drive innovation and create value, and how we leverage all the talent we can get in Mauritius, so that as a country we can increase our GDP growth. Yeah, I mean, McKinsey estimate that in the next decade, if we were to fully utilize women globally, we will add $13 trillion to the global GDP, which is a huge. Now, I don't know about Mauritius. I think it's probably worth doing some calculation like this, that if I add X number of women to the economy, what is the impact to the GDP?
Yeah, like you say, diversity and inclusion cannot be separated. I love the fact that you utilize the women.
Sorry.
To enhance the GDP. Sadhna, you want to tell us how that topic resonates to you?
Thank you, Vimi, but I think Vidya has done an excellent presentation, and I think will add to what he has said. I mean, when I looked at the definition of diversity, it's making reference, to gender, sex, religion, etc. But I think for companies, what is important is the diversity of thoughts, and we should avoid groupthink. And one way to achieve this diversity is, of course, having more women on the board. This is, I think, the objective that we all have. The reason being, and as Vidya has said, there is this report by McKinsey, there is a direct positive correlation between diversity and performance of companies. It's actually the diversity of thoughts, of actions, that is, I think, that we are looking at. And we have to harness that for a company, this diversity of thoughts. Why? Because this diversity of thoughts, instead of having a group think, will enable your companies to be more agile, to be more resilient, to be more adaptable. This is what we want. And also in this very complex financial world, so many challenges, is also to be more sustainable at the same time. So it is this diversity of thought that we need to harness. And also, when I was looking up the definition of equity, I think here we have to make a difference between equitable and equity. Equitable means when you give the same treatment to everyone. But for women and other parts of the community, what is important is that you probably need to adjust the way you think, the way you react, the way you behave, the way you support this community. If you want to give an equitable treatment, so that the end result is the same, but your action, your treatment has to be adjusted. So it's not just giving the same treatment to everyone.
And thank you, Sadhna, for bringing that thing of the diversity of thoughts, which goes way beyond just gender diversity.
Exactly.
And thank you for that powerful way you termed it. And you mentioned something that yesterday in that crowd that we were yesterday, you mentioned about this equality and the equity, and there is clarity to important to that, definitely. Mark, over to you. How does DEI resonate to you?
So for me, I'm very passionate about people, and I've had the pleasure in my career of working in pretty much every culture around the world. And when you scratch the surface of culture and meet human beings in whichever culture they exist, human beings all over the world want the same things. They want to feel valued, they want to feel appreciated, they want opportunities, they want safety for their family. And for me, diversity is really simple. It's about treating individuals with respect and making sure that wherever they're from in the world, or whatever their history is, or whatever their gender is, or all the other aspects related to diversity, is you are different from me, and I respect that. And when we get that level of simplicity, actually diversity is quite simple. And I'm very passionate about that and making sure that we treat every individual like an individual and we respect them for who they are. That's my personal passion.
Thank you, Mark. Sounds like it's common sense, but then again, common sense is not common.
Not
So
common
thank
practice.
you. Yeah. So thank you very much. Shalini, how does that resonate to you?
I come last. A lot of things have already been said.
You can start first next time.
I can. No, it's fine. It's fine. I think that you were very wise, and it's good that you started early. I'm not a morning person. So hi, hi everyone. So how it resonates to me. I think I grew up in a family of 3 daughters, so I'm the eldest one, first one of my generation, and obviously no one. It had to be like that because there were no boys in my family. I don't know how, but I ended up in an engineering world where I've always been part of the minority. I studied in France in French engineering schools, as you may know. It's 10% of girls. So I was part of that 10% minority. I started, like you rightly mentioned, my career in the industrial, the petroleum industry at Total in France. Again, part of the minority. So I would say I'm pretty grateful that I came with a movement that diversity was the right thing to do. Equality is the way to go, and period. All human beings are equal, and whether you are male or female, you're a human being. And I'm actually very grateful that that movement of inclusion and diversity started at the right moment for me, because otherwise maybe I would have not pursued a career in where I am, and I would probably be questioning my choice of tertiary education, a career that I made at the beginning, and probably would have reviewed my priorities. So I'm grateful, and at the same time, I am pretty much aware that whilst I have 22 years of career this year, where I have reached, maybe I have paved the way for many, and that gives me a sense of responsibility to continue actually working towards making our world inclusive and diverse. And it resonates further the fact that that I have a daughter, and it is my responsibility to make sure that she doesn't feel like she's part of the minority group, that she's worth exactly the same, her value is the same as her brother.
That's brilliant. And you mentioned some keywords like the ownership and the responsibility, which we all have. So which brings me on to my next question. And now that you've woken up, I can start with you.
Yeah, okay.
Which is, we here at Accenture, and we know Ceridian, you do a lot globally when it comes to the DEI. So would you mind sharing with us some of the policies, actions that are in place for the leaders and the organization at Accenture globally to take ownership of that DEI?
Sure. We can say a lot of great things, like diversity is the right thing to do, equality is what we should be doing, we should be but if it's not followed by actions, it doesn't really change anything. The person within Accenture who actually put diversity and inclusion in the middle of our strategy was our ex-CEO, Pierre Nanterre, and very passionate about the subject, a French person. He wanted to make a better world for, again, his daughter. So hence why, I think it was in 2014, and Accenture set out a bold goal that in 2025, the workforce will be 50% male and 50% female, with 35% female at executive levels, and set up a program to get there. So I think the first thing that has really helped is to send out that bold message that whatever happens in 2025, we are reaching parity. And we didn't just say it like it should happen overnight, because such things do not happen overnight. So that was the first thing, having, you know, what we call bold leadership, being bold enough to say it. And then to hold all the leaders accountable for that. So that is cascaded at each level within Accenture. Every team lead has, I would say, needs to be conscious on the fact that needs to look at diversity and gender parity and inclusion in different teams. That's the first aspect. The second one is, what do we do to make sure that women can progress in their careers? And that goes through understanding what the issue is. In the technology industry, the issue was that, you know, that maybe you may start with 30% at the university, but there are a lot of dropouts by the third or between 3 and 5 years of career. That used to happen a lot within Accenture and elsewhere. So understanding why people are dropping out of the workforce, and obviously, well, as obvious as it is, one of the reasons is that a career in the industry and in the private sector is deemed to be incompatible with a family life. When you coincides with the time when you're married, you have children, so it doesn't work out anymore. So second aspect is, what do you do to keep those people? And what we have done is, at that time in 2015, introduce things like flexible work arrangements, part-time, work from home, and saying it loud that your career can be made at your pace. You just don't need to shut down. You can just slow down and then take it up again. That's the second aspect. And the third one is, and you mentioned sense of belonging. People stay when they have that sense of belonging, and where they feel they are at ease and they feel they belong. So you have to have that environment where people know that they are bringing value. If you go to work as a woman and, you know, everyone is saying, she's just a woman, that's not the place for you, right? So the whole company culture needs to evolve so that everyone has his or her place. So those are the three things: having KPIs and keeping everyone accountable, rearranging your work policies, and then creating the environment where everyone can feel they belong.
Superb. And you mentioned that sense of belongingness to create that culture where it in fact impacts the retention and engagement, like you're saying.
Exactly.
And before that, I know Mark will probably be talking about how we create that culture. Just wanted to ask Vidya, because I know from Ceridian perspective there is also a lot that you're doing globally, and I know in Mauritius there are schools and so on. So do you mind sharing with us how Ceridian is going about to making sure that you have an environment of DI within the organization you can answer?
Sure. So diversity, equity, and inclusion is very much at the foundation of our organization. It's all about creating that culture where people feel they are respected, they are welcome, they can contribute, they have a voice. So at Ceridian, as an organization, we are a software company in human capital management. We actually build and sell software to help employers to actually monitor their workforce. So actually our technology enables organizations to know, like Charlene was sharing, in terms of where you want to go over the next 5 years, how do you track how people are progressing at the leadership level. So we actually enable this to our customers to be able to use it. So at Ceridian, we believe that diversity is very important for creativity, and we are a software company, so creativity is central in what we do. So we have created the framework and a lot of methodology that will help. Just one thing to note is that what we're talking about is more than a number game. We are not just trying to be compliant for the sake of being politically correct. Yeah, we've achieved X percentage, so we are there. So I think it's much more than this. So we have a council, the Global Diversity Advisory Council, who sits and think about what is the current situation, what do we need to do. We have a school of diversity, equity, and inclusion, where we equip our people, our leaders, on identifying the biases and the blinders that they need to be aware of so that they can address it, remove it, so that people can feel more inclusive in the organization. In Mauritius, one of the challenges we found that prevent women, especially in our industry, to go beyond in their career is the fact that when they get married, they start having kids, they cannot cope with the pressure of work, with the time, etc. So flexibility has been very much at the beginning of what we did. I mean, COVID-19 was not when we started getting people working from home. We've been doing this for over 15, 16 years, and the reason is because, so basically what it is that because we're one of the few companies in Mauritius who are working with North America. Most of our sector actually are Euro-centric, but working with North America, the time zone is extremely challenging. So what we did is that we get the team to come to Mauritius, and then they can leave to come to the office, and then at 1:30, 2 o'clock, they leave, they pick their kids, they go home, they continue their work at home. Yeah. So that was something we established over 15 years ago. And more recently, we have introduced what we call the compressed work week, which is you work 9 days, you get 1 day off, 9 days, you get 1 day off. So you get like 26 days off in addition to your local leave, etc. So this gives people more opportunity to work from home, take care of their family, because we believe that someone who has a balance in their work life and their professional life perform better. They are more creative, they are more engaged, and engagement is so important as an organization because engagement drives profitability and success and great customer experience. So in Mauritius, we launched many programs. There was one which we launched many years ago called Go Sponsor Her. This was actually started by two professors, one from Harvard Business School, the other one was from MIT. And they actually said that you can talk as much as you want about diversity and inclusion of women in leadership, etc. But unless you have a sponsorship program within the organization where you have senior leaders that actually mentor and sponsor someone that is actually perceived as kind of the potential talent to grow, then nothing changes in the organization. So I actually mentored a few women leaders, a few years ago. So that's one thing that we have been doing. And then we also launched the Syrian Women Network in 2009 in Mauritius for two purposes. One is that we wanted to get women who are not managers yet or directors yet to actually have a platform that they can build leadership skill. So they were looking at projects, and one of the projects that we were working on is how do we get girls and women to get into technology and learn to code. So we've been doing this for many years, and the people who actually run this are not actually leaders in the organization, but they are people who have potential. So through this program, we've been able to identify high potential people that today are directors in the organization. Yeah. So these are some of the things that we do. We have also received or awarded the EDGE certification in 2018. EDGE certification is a global certification that you get an auditor that comes and audit your company policies, your pay structures, just to make sure that there is no discrimination between women and men, because we wanted to be very transparent about doing this. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that, and you need to keep doing it, because now that we have even greater footprint in Asia Pacific, where I am very closely involved with, I see other challenges, in terms of diversity. I mean, diversity is also about the thinking, because what I've discovered, just like we used to say Africa is not one country, it's 50 countries. What I've discovered in Asia Pacific is that Asia is not one country. You have neighboring countries, they think so differently. And how do we actually harness that creativity and bring more inclusion is another challenge that I'm working on.
Totally. And that women network that you
Syrian
created,
Women Network,
reminded me of Accenture launched Accent sur Elle sometime back as well. Just coming back to what you said about diverse teams and the innovation that brings, there's one actual survey that was done in Boston, I don't have the date, that actually says it found that companies with more diverse management teams generated 90% more revenue from innovation than companies from less diverse teams. So that's exactly what you So Mark, I think that's a lovely transition into the DEI culture and some of the bias that can get in the way.
Yeah. I think this conversation, a good place to start the conversation about bias is with myself. You know, we're all on a journey, and I've been on a journey of diversity, equity and inclusion. The more I deliver this program with our clients, the more it causes me to understand. And just in the last week in Mauritius, I'm learning so much more about the subtleties. You know, so although I'm committed, very committed, to treating each individual with respect, that's kind of not enough unless we look at ourselves. And what I realise as a baby boomer with white skin and white hair, I have bias built into my DNA without even realising it. And looking at ourselves to say, what are our unconscious biases? We don't do it on purpose. We're not trying to offend anyone. But our culture, our marinade, our upbringing, our education creates bias within our mind. And I've been on a journey to say, what are the biases in the way that I think that therefore drives my behaviour? And we're now enabling other organisations to do the same. And you're absolutely right, Vidya, about thinking. Is that unless the thinking changes, nothing changes. And for me, it starts with personal responsibility to say, I'm responsible for the impact that I have on other people. And if I don't look at me, then why should I encourage other people to do the same? So it's just thinking about our own individual bias, and then in our leadership role, enabling other people to do the same. And I think that's how we make change, is one person at a time. Start with yourself. That's my advice.
Thank you, Mark. Juliet, if you can share with us how all that is happening in terms of creating and maintaining that psychologically safe environment for DI to settle in and to take shape properly.
Yes, I think if I can just wear my Dale Carnegie hat for this one, because almost rather than what our organisation's doing, something I've been caused to see is what our organisation's failing to do, and building on what Mark says. So over the years, I've been invited to various organisations like the BBC and Adidas, people where they say, we need to develop our women, we need more women leaders, so we want a women's leadership development programme. And of course there's a place for developing women leaders in isolation, and please talk to Vimy, she'll be happy to arrange that. But in each case, I've tried to cause those organisations to look up in the same way. If we develop women with leadership skills and give them more confidence, that's brilliant. But if at the top of the organisation, the attitudes, the mindset, the thinking doesn't shift, then it's only going to have limited impact. So culture is very much a phenomenon of leadership, and we really have to challenge ourselves, as Mark said, personal responsibility, but challenge at the highest level within organisations with the blind spots, and make the shift there. So there's one organisation I know which is one of the biggest car retailers, automotive retailers in the UK, and they couldn't understand why they didn't have more women coming through the ranks. And of course it's a very traditional environment where typically you think selling cars is about, petrol heads, love cars, not a very female environment, which wasn't necessarily the barrier. The barrier was at the top level, and the lack of almost the senior leadership were uncomfortable managing women's female performance because they were only used to interacting with men in that environment, and it was literally stopping them promoting women within the organisation. So yes, we need to develop our women, and we need to develop our men as well to have a common mindset, and to shift that thinking so that people are truly inclusive in organisations.
Did you just make that up? Culture is a phenomenon of leadership. I'm a J, but I think that's just so nicely said, and at times organizations do not realize that. So now, from a Bank of Mauritius perspective, where things are probably more structured, and we were just talking before that the public sector, I think, has got more women representation. So if you wouldn't mind sharing with us how DEI takes shape in an organization like yours or other organizations that you interact.
I think compared to most of the companies present around here, the Bank of Mauritius is one of the, I think, one of the oldest institutions. It's celebrating its 56th anniversary this year, and it's only, I mean, in 2020 that I was appointed like the first woman deputy governor, and that was also the time when the first time that we had women on the board of the bank. So can you imagine that for 52 years this institution has been present, and it's only been a male board of directors. So we have a lot of baggage. I won't deny that. But we are getting there. And I really liked the phrase that Mark has just said, is that for me personally, and I find that resonating with other lady deputy governors, my counterparts whom I meet in Africa and in Europe, less in Europe, but more in Africa, is that we feel that we have a responsibility, you know, a responsibility of the impact, to use your words, that we have on another women. And I really feel that. And I mean, I also come from a background of 3 daughters, and I have a son and I have a daughter. Is the responsibility is, you know, to encourage the women, because the big problem we have in Mauritius is that when you look at the statistics at secondary school, women do better than boys, than the men. University, more women coming out of universities. But where are they? I mean, sometimes when you ask the board of directors or private institutions or other institutions, but why don't you have more female? And the first question they ask, they tell you, is, but where are the women? So what we have done at the Bank of Mauritius, well, we are an equal opportunity employer. Even in the interview panel, we make sure that, you know, women are equally represented. But I think there is a problem, as you say. There is everybody sort of stuck at a certain level, and there is, as we say, we need to do some hand holding, you know, to bring the women higher up the ladder. And I think this is where women like us, who, you know, we've reached there, we have a responsibility. So I mean, last year I enrolled all our other potential leaders in the institution, you know, to join the MIOD leadership program. And now we are also starting the mentoring program. But the mentoring program, what I've also seen is that in Mauritius, because of our educational system, very competitive and very individualistic. Some of my staff, be it men or women, perform very well individually. But when you put them in a team, that's a different story. So what I'm trying to say is that even mentoring that is also a challenge in Mauritius. So, you know, it's a mix. It's a big challenge, because some women will tell you, and this I've shared, I mean, some of the other deputy governors in Africa told you the same thing. Look, I'm happy where I am. You know, I have a good job, I have a good salary, a good lifestyle. I don't want to go up and have more responsibility, blah, 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 you know. So this is also a challenge.
So it's something that you're also hearing out there in
Oh, yes. Oh, this is something that you need to budge them, because also the new generation is a generation, you know, I don't know, they've got different goals, not like my generation, where you had to work hard to strive where you were. This is what you've been learned, and this generation, I think we are probably responsible for that as well, is that we've given our kids everything. You know, the motivation sometimes is not there. And they just want to come at bank and work and have it on the CV for a few years and off to new horizons. So it's a challenge, and just to join with what we are talking today, this is where we have to make our workplace more inclusive, to retain and to have more commitment.